So hi, everyone. This is Naomi speaking. Today, Mara and I are going to talk to you about 7 must-have VSM capabilities. The topic couldn't be more timely, so I'm just going to introduce you to it a little bit. Here's what we know, okay? Till now, Gartner say that by 2023, so in 3 years, 70% of organizations will use VSM to improve the flow of value to their customers, leading to faster delivery. And at the same time, most traditional businesses are shifting their previously project-oriented IT organizations to product-oriented ones, focusing on product value streams. The understanding there is that product value stream structures make you more agile and nimble, more responsive to the market by giving the product line leaders the authority to shift resources and funds and do that 90% faster than they could in a project model. And organizations, they truly do need these changes in order to get better and fast. Based on this data from Forrester, as of today, only 16% of IT organizations can release more than once a month. So for many, they release at a much slower pace. And the question is why? And often it's because organizations lack adequate data and analytics on the end-to-end flow to know what is impeding IT from accelerating, or they just don't know where to prioritize their improvement initiatives. In cases where they do know, they often don't have adequate data, analytics, and visualizations to convince their leadership of it and get funding and investment where it's needed. But the reality is that you can't be a competitive digital product creator without an approach to continuous improvement across the end-to-end value stream. And that's where value stream management comes in. So after the last decade of Agile and DevOps, it has become clear that there is something else that's missing if you're really going to scale those practices to more than a few experiments or teams or pockets of success. And what Gartner is saying here in this quote is that you need a solution that can provide higher level metrics that encompass all the disciplines involved in creating and maintaining a product portfolio. And I'm talking here about business products, internal IT platforms. It's only with those higher level metrics that you are able to make data-driven decisions that will benefit end-to-end flow as opposed to local optimizations that don't necessarily move the needle on business results. So if you're going to improve and ultimately maximize flow, you have to measure flow and continuously improve it. And the value stream metrics, or we often call them flow metrics here at Tasktop, are designed to do exactly that, right? Flow time measures speed to market. Flow efficiency measures wait times and where work gets stuck. And flow velocity measures productivity or throughput. But measuring flow metrics over complex knowledge work networks in enterprises that have thousands or tens of thousands of IT practitioners can be really challenging, right? Because the information is never in one place. In fact, in a study that Tasktop conducted, over 300 enterprise IT value stream networks that we analyzed, we found that 42% of them use 4 to 10 core collaboration tools for their portfolio management, design, enterprise agile planning, testing, and ITSM, and then dozens more of additional tools to support the CI/CD pipeline and operations. So these heterogeneous tool chains are evidence that practitioners want to work in specialized tools, right? And they demand user experiences that maximize their roles, focus, flow, and joy. If you're familiar with Gene Kim's 5 Ideals for the Modern Enterprise that he put out there in the Unicorn Project, if you've read it. So, but if that's the case, and there are so many tools at play, measuring flow for value streams involves tracing its constituent units of value creation as they traverse all those teams and tools and departments, and in the form of artifacts, right, like capabilities and epics and features and stories and bugs and incidents. And that's just not easy, right? So because it's a difficult discipline to do value stream management, vendors have stepped into this space. Many an organization has tried to build their own homegrown value stream metrics off of data lakes, and they have seen that it is difficult to gather and correlate the right data in near real time, right? And then provide proper visualizations and deep analytics over it. So we've kind of gotten to the point where the industry is recognizing that you need off-the-shelf solutions that can do that for you so you can focus on your core business, right, where you make your money. So the Forrester Wave, which came out mid-July, just a couple of weeks ago, established the space of value stream management and ranked the vendors in it. And at Tasktop, of course, we are pleased to have been named a leader. And if you're familiar with any of these vendors on the slide, you may have an inkling that they don't all do the same thing. So I'd like to take this opportunity to help you think about value stream management solutions based on 7 must-have capabilities that are going to get you ROI. And as I go through that list, I'm going to pause here and there for Mara to demonstrate what these capabilities look like in an actual vendor solution, in this case, our Tasktop platform. So let's get started with that. We're going to be talking about 7 must-have capabilities in your VSM solution, and they are business orientation, visualization, context-sensitive analytics, actionable flow diagnostics, abstraction, flow automation, and governance. And we're going to knock these out one by one to kind of provide you more detail. But before we do that, I do want to set the bar with some general considerations, which kind of, are just like setting the criteria, the barriers to entry when you're even considering a solution. You should be looking at these 3 core capabilities. The first one is time to value. So leadership needs data and insights from the end-to-end value stream in order to respond to a rapidly changing market, and especially now with COVID, a rapidly changing economic climate. So you can't really afford to spend a lot of time waiting for that data to accumulate, adopting new tools and onboarding everybody to new technology necessarily. You want to get to time to value fast. So here are some of the considerations that you might want to ask are like, can the value stream management solution provide visibility and metrics into value streams within hours of provisioning? And can it work with the current tool structure that you have without imposing too many prerequisites and preconditions, like you have to change your tools, you have to change your schemas, you have to change the way the artifacts that you use or the processes that you follow, or completely redo your organizational structure. And the third point here is, does the solution support a gradual transition from project to product? So helping you measure like the current state, even if you're very project oriented and are just taking baby steps into a product oriented value stream, can the tool that you choose for value stream management kind of measure your current state and your gradual transition into a product oriented value stream? The second general consideration should be about scalability. Value stream management is really a challenge the larger the organization. So when we're talking about, the Global 2000, the Fortune 500, the Fortune 100, these are tremendously large IT organizations. So of course you need a solution that can scale very easily across the organization, right? To establish the foundation for some sustainable flow metrics. So it's important, when you look at these big organizations, you have a lot of variability in the ways people work, even though you might strive to have a unified tool chain and tool stack, you still have variation. INO teams work differently from app dev teams. In-house people work different from outsourced, contractors. You might have different tool stacks that have come in through mergers and acquisitions. So you have to be able to accommodate that. The solution kind of has to scale to be able to accommodate all that variability. And also things that also change are always the underlying tools where people do the work. So version upgrades, new tools, migrations to the cloud, all that needs to kind of be absorbed seamlessly into your solution so that you're not always halted from taking it further. And finally, you want a situation where you're not creating a bottleneck by relying on one core team that only they can, define a value stream and get the metrics on your behalf. Rather, you should be considering tools that allow for decentralization of the value stream measurement process, right? So I basically think about this as kind of decentralizing and democratizing the work, letting the value streams model their own work, look at their own metrics, make adaptations and accommodations as needed. So you're really looking to decentralize. The last point I would make is about implementation. Can you imagine doing SAFe, Spotify, CI/CD, DevOps, without the guidance of some experienced people and without some very charismatic coaches? Probably not, right? Many organizations, they need help to identify their product value streams and to learn to implement strategies to improve flow and drive new behaviors. So you should ideally have somebody who can provide you that support for the change from the practitioner level and all the way up to the C-suite. And you are going to need training, coaching, and advisory on how to incorporate VSM into your daily practice. So now let's move on to the first must-have capability, and it's business orientation. To me, with my experience, it is 100% clear to me that this is the number one capability you need, because with the transition from project to product, with the understanding that every business is a software business, which has already become a cliche, and I don't always like to say it, but it's a must. You understand that your software delivery value streams exist to create value for the business. So you have to make sure that you can measure IT productivity correlated with business impact. So the capabilities that you'd be looking for is a dashboard or a view of the value stream, right, that can create and bridge the gaps between business and technology. And for that reason, it's really important that it uses non-technical language. We often joke that like a CFO doesn't care about agile story points, right? Or releases per day. Like, it's really about the what. What is the business getting from this product value stream? So having that non-technical language so you can talk to your business partners and your finance stakeholders is very important. The second point is very much related, which is that you need a capability that can help put everybody on the same page, creating a focus on the customer, okay? What does a customer value? Let's measure that, right? So a customer values the speed that they're getting things and the quantity of things that they're getting within a time period. And the business cares that the things that they're getting are the right things, meaning they're moving the needle on the business results that they need, selling more, more adoption, more productivity, lower cost. And you'd also want to see the value stream metrics that you're going to be measuring be trended along the key business outcomes of each value stream. Because looking at flow metrics in isolation from what the business needs to happen can lead to drawing the wrong conclusions, thinking that you always just need to make your flow metrics look right. But what if you have to sometimes sacrifice elements of flow in order to achieve a specific business outcome? That could be the right decision. But if you're not looking at them side by side, you're incapable of making that decision, and then you're incapable of justifying your decisions. So the last thing is that really value stream management is bringing everybody on the same page. But when we think about the people who own the business, these are the executives that own a portfolio and several product lines, they really need a bird's eye view of all value streams to support decisions like rebalancing and reprioritization. Here's an interesting quote, again from Gartner, where they really stress that value stream management platforms allow all the teams participating in the DevOps value stream to have that shared visibility into business development and operational metrics to help them measure shared business outcomes. That's really where we want to be, that true partnership between IT and the business. Identify the constraints and agree together to tackle them. Let's move on now to, I forgot that first I wanted to talk about this, which is, this is a bit of Tasktop's philosophy When we talk about focusing on flow in a value stream and focusing on customers and what they value, we abstract what flows in a value stream into 4 flow item types. That means that all the work that gets done is in service for creating these 4 types of value. Features, which are new business capabilities, which your customers are willing to exchange money for, right, or time for, even if you're an internal product. Defects, those are the improvements, quality improvements to a product that's already in use. Customers definitely value that. So when we look at features and defects, this is like the obvious, it's the value creation layer. But when we look, there's another layer, which is called value protection, business value protection. If you're not, securing your system, patching vulnerabilities, remaining in compliance with regulation, you're exposing the business to risk through your product. So software delivery work that mitigates risk, protects the business, and that too flows in a value stream. And the last one are debts. Maybe the most familiar is technical debt, but there's also debt in ways of work. So in order to maintain the velocity and like the long-term health of a product, as much as you're working on new, cool, sexy capabilities, you should also be paying down debt so that you're not accumulating it and kind of leading yourself into what we call the death spiral, where you're just overcome by defects that are slowing you down. So we'll see some of that when Mara shows you Tasktop's view of value streams. So now let's talk about context-sensitive analytics. Context is king. Business context and the contributing factors are vital information when interpreting flow metrics, value stream metrics, and using them to make data-driven decisions about how we can get faster, how we can get better. So a key capability here is decorating metric timelines with meaningful business events, because nobody remembers what happened 6 months ago, or why we took that decision, or why did we have this dip in productivity here, right? So if you can decorate your timelines with meaningful business events like changes to headcount, changes to processes, workflows, tools, mergers, acquisitions, reorgs, strategy pivots, ways of working initiatives, that helps you understand their impact on flow. Has it been positive? Has it been negative? Is it getting us the results that we want? It's also very useful to overlay timelines with the development cadence over your metrics. So that includes like planning, funding, program increments, releases, sprints, etc. Because ultimately, when you're in a value stream mode, you're seeking to improve flow year on year, quarter over quarter, PI over PI if you're doing safe, and you should be able to see that. And the third point here is that value stream throughput of 10 features is good for a value stream of 10 people, but maybe less impressive if it's for 150 people, right? So it really matters. Like when we look at velocity and throughput, when we look at load, over how many people are carrying this weight is super important. So you want to normalize your flow metrics or your value stream metrics by FTE. And yeah, here's a nice quote. Keeping a timeline of events that impact our teams and outcomes helps to interpret the historical data. It's really important. The third point is visualization. Good visualizations help create that shared understanding of the value stream, its performance, and its challenges. So a capability that you really need is to kind of digitally instrument the value stream to create consensus. I'm sure many of you have participated in your life in value stream mapping exercises. They're wonderful, aren't they? They are illuminating, but they are a point in time, and they're pen and paper. When we're moving into the world of digital value stream management, you can have that picture drawn for you all the time using real-time data captured from your value stream. And that's what constructs, the visualization from live value stream data, as opposed to boardroom exercises that are pen and paper. And it facilitates the understanding of what flows, how it flows, and how well it's flowing. So that's really terrific. And when you can get there, your bottlenecks will just stare at you in the face, as this one person says, right? You can just see where your problems lie. And we're going to dive more into that topic in a minute. But this is the first opportunity where I'm going to be handing over to Mara to show you what some of these capabilities can look like. I do want to preface by saying that Tasktop solution implements the flow framework, which is a value stream methodology for large-scale enterprises, which was published by Tasktop's CEO, Mick Kirsten, in his best-selling book, Project to Product. And so, this is really what shapes our view of the world, and you could be looking at that if you want at projecttoproduct.org or flowframework.org or on Tasktop's own website. So now I am going to hand over to Mara so that she can take over from me and show you all a demo.
All right, so what I'll do is I'll kind of walk through the value stream management platform that we have here, and I'll talk about how some of those capabilities that Naomi was just discussing can really come to life and help you in your day-to-day work and your day-to-day kind of your value stream management activities. And I'll try to touch up on all the little different pieces that Naomi introduced in slides. I'll try to talk about how those, like I said, come to life here. Before we dive into the actual metrics and what you see on the screen, I'm just going to explain the layout of the product so that you could understand what we're talking about here. So number one, this particular system is this particular organization is a insurance company. And for this particular organizations, we can see, I can kind of list out and describe all of my product value streams for that particular organization. So think about it this way. This is a demo environment that I'm showing this off of, but the data is actually real. So we're gonna see some actual real stories. But this particular insurance company has quite a few different product value streams. In your world, the product value streams obviously may be different, and they will also depend on what value each of the value streams is delivering, right? And this is not just external value streams, this is also potentially internal value streams that are delivering benefit to other internal value streams. So think of the term product value stream as kind of an all-encompassing one. So number one, speaking of one of Naomi's first capabilities is the ability to really see this information in a very comprehensive way and in a non-technical language. So the ability to go from one value stream to the next and have the same information in the same language presented to you as a leader, as a manager, as a product owner is extremely valuable, because you don't have to go and understand the intricate details of each value stream, what's happening behind the scenes. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But one of the other things that I'll talk about is what you see on the actual main page is your 5 flow metrics and how they relate to business results. So one of the key things that Naomi was talking about was the ability to tie everything back to your business, to tie all the decisions you make, all the investments you make, and all of that tied back to the actual business impact. Because ultimately, you want to make decisions that improve your business results, right? So that is one of the key and core things here in this value stream management platform, is to be able to look at your metrics and then see how they tie back to your business results. Examples of business results will depend on the value stream. For instance, a home insurance value stream will have business results like renewals or revenue, or maybe infrastructure costs. We'll talk about a story here in a second, or total cost of full-time employees. So you will decide what is the business value and the categories for each value stream. But the beauty is that you can track them side by side with your IT flow metrics. And the other thing that Naomi was talking about is the ability to tag, kind of put context in your in this information. So put tie context into the conversation and understand what is really happening, what timeline events have taken place. So that's the other thing that you'll see throughout the whole dashboard, is the ability to track important timeline events for each of your value streams. And whether it's your headcount, so number of full-time employees, whether it's some investment experiment decision you've made, whether it is if you're into the safe, if you're using safe methodologies, maybe your PI planning events. So registering these important events for each of your value streams is one of the other things that you'll see throughout the dashboard here. But as you'll see, that business results, both business results as well as the metrics themselves, actually get the timeline events kind of wrapped on top of them. So you can, whenever you're looking at a certain metric or business result or the whole thing in conjunction, you can always view the same timeline events, the same events that have happened with this value stream. And just to give you a great example from real world is a lot of our customers, what we've seen do is definitely register the start of COVID, the start of work at home, work from home, and see how that impacts our value stream. So that's a great example of a business event or timeline event that is happening. So let's go through, let me spend 2 minutes or so just briefly touching on each of the flow metrics. Naomi already introduced them briefly, passing through the slides, but I'll recap on what they are, and then I'll go through a quick little story so you could see how all of this that we talked about kind of ties together. So the 4 flow metrics and flow distribution, we'll start with flow distribution. Remember how Naomi was talking about your the different flow item types, the abstraction layer that we create within the product so that organizations don't have to so much worry about how each team calls something, but you can more just kind of worry about how what type of work everything is. And that's the first flow metric that we'll essentially kind of touch on, which is flow distribution. It's this one on the right. It's that beautiful, simple bird's eye view of the types of work that each value stream is doing. And the goal, the ultimate goal of modern value streams is to have a healthy mix of your features and your defects and your debt work and risk, right? So that is your first kind of indicator for your value stream. The other ones, flow velocity will be your throughput. So this is a classic metric out in the industry, the ability to track the actual throughput of each value stream. And then the other one is flow time. And flow time is, in the world of value stream management, flow time is not just code commit to release. It's from the moment that we or this organization decides to build a certain feature till the moment that feature is delivered back to the customer. So we're not just talking about development practices, we're talking about design, UX, definition, breakdown. So all of these steps that are important to tie into your flow time. And then flow efficiency is of that time, of the flow time, how much time is spent in an active versus waiting state. And that lets you see how efficient is your processes, right? So the number 54, if you think it's low, it's not. That's an actually pretty high number out there. We even see some crazy numbers with 20% and 10%. So meaning that the work just sits and waits for a human to pick it up and do something about it. And that's a critical piece to understanding where your bottlenecks are, right? Like, where is your work waiting? How efficiently are our processes working? And then the last one, I like to leave this last, and we'll dive into flow load a little bit more just in a second, but this is your WIP for your value stream. So when I say WIP, I mean not just for one development team and one Kanban board, this is WIP for your whole end-to-end value stream. So this is the load your organization is putting on this value stream. And the beautiful thing that you might have already noticed here is that the numbers for flow load and flow velocity get normalized. Get normalized based on full-time. So normalized per person. So you can actually see how the numbers are and what the numbers are on a per person basis. So I can essentially see that I have 202 total items in progress for this value stream, which might seem a lot, but given that the value stream has 40-ish people contributing to it, 5 per person is still high, but obviously you can start seeing the information in a relative manner, an easy to comprehend way. So So those are your 4 flow metrics flow distribution. And as you can see in all of these visuals, I keep track of the same, like we already talked, the actual timeline events, so that I can see how the information, how the decisions we've made in this value stream are actually impacting my metrics. So let me go through a very, very fast example for just so you could see and envision how organizations may be using all this in conjunction with each other. So we're going to start with looking at one of the business results. So we're going to look at infrastructure costs. This particular value stream determined that back in late April, early May, it's determining that the infrastructure costs that they've accumulated, monthly costs, are just too high. It's just unacceptable. And they're essentially trying to investigate why those are so high. And they actually figured out that they had an initiative that they were pushing forward towards the end of last year, beginning of this year, to kind of initiate a cloud offering. So they essentially accrued a lot of technical debt for that particular value stream. And that's okay. The business knew it. Everybody was okay with it. But now that things have stabilized, they realize that it's time to pay off that technical debt, time to pay off that debt so that the costs can go down. So one of the things that you'll see right here on my dashboards and on my metrics is a timeline event on all of these metrics that on May 14th, they essentially decided to pay off debt. So essentially make some changes in their infrastructure. I think they went with some new offering on Amazon as an example, and they were essentially trying to consolidate the costs so that they can get those under control. The beautiful thing is that by being able to see all of this information in one place, I can see that that is exactly what took place. Number one, there was a much higher focus on purple, which is technical debt. So they did exactly what they anticipated and said. So we're going to focus on tech debt. And then they also started tracking the infrastructure costs, right? And hoping that it will trend down. So obviously it'll take another month or two to make sure that it's stabilizing, but this is a way of seeing exactly that, where the decision was made, what was the decision, and then seeing how that impacts all the metrics along the way. So that's a very, very quick example of how you use all this in conjunction. And we'll go through a couple more examples as we proceed, but I was going to pass back, Naomi, to you to kind of introduce the couple capabilities.
Okay, great. So that was like setting the stage. We've got flow metrics trended next to business results with context-sensitive analytics, or historical markings on them. So now we're really going to go into number 4, which is actionable flow diagnostics. So we're not measuring value streams for nothing, right? We have a goal to identify what we can improve before it's too late. So the capabilities that we're looking for here are about the ability to identify bottlenecks that are impeding faster delivery. Can your value stream management solution easily discern which bottleneck is most impacting end-to-end flow, the system bottleneck? So likely you have many places where flow isn't perfect, but you want to find the biggest one because that's the system bottleneck. That's where you should invest, because we all know that in the theory of constraints, unless you remove the system constraints, all the other optimizations you're making around it won't help the end result. So that's what you're looking for, is that now that you have baseline metrics, that your tool can also tell you where you could be doing better and where the real big problems are. The second point is that once you have a bottleneck, that you are able to investigate it and probe it and look at the why, right? What's contributing to this specific bottleneck? And you might have to carry out some of your deeper investigation in the tools that you use for that specific stage or that specific discipline. But the tool does allow you to get into providing kind of a direction for your investigation. And the third point is the ability to quantify and visualize the improvement when the bottlenecks are minimalized, right? Or minimized. So basically, you had a bottleneck, you decided to experiment around it, And you want to see the impact of those experiments in your flow metrics. That will help to tell you, was the experiment a success or a failure? You will have many failed experiments, I'm sure. It doesn't mean it's not worth trying to do, right? Because in this, like this lovely quote, in a new digital age, we have no choice other to reprogram our intuitions with experiments. Before we do and take on some huge thing, let's try it out. Let's see if it really did have the results. Or sometimes, it might have the results, but it had an unexpected side effect that you're like, no, we can do better than that, right? So so that's what we want to talk to you about now. That's really important. So I'm going to hand it back to Mara, and she'll show you an example of what it looks like to probe and identify your bottlenecks.
Yep, so we're going to go back here and we're going to actually look at a little bit of a different value stream, just to kind of see a couple different things and be able to touch upon a couple different things. So this is my payment platform value stream for the same organization. And you'll see that, again, the information is presented to you in the same language. So easily I can jump from value stream to value stream, understand the business results that are valid and relevant for each of the value streams, and then understand how the actual value stream is doing with regards to their processes. One of the things that we'll look at here, interestingly, and I'll kind of talk through a little bit of a analysis scenario here and telling you how you get to, like Naomi said, how do you identify that there's an issue and how can you start investigating and understanding why is there an issue. So number one, if we look at flow distribution on the top right, we can see that there's a lot of time and a lot of effort being spent on defects. Every release, there's a bunch of the time from this value stream is being delivered and dedicated towards defects. And that may be okay, that might be intentional. However, you might want to start investigating some of these other indicators. So for instance, if we look at features, we can also see that the feature flow time, so the amount of time that it takes to deliver features, keeps climbing as well. So for me, and then actually 3, the flow load, so the amount of features that are in progress for this value stream keeps climbing as well. So for me, from an investigative perspective, I could say, okay, looks like there is a lot of unplanned work, which may be defects, but I'm not sure yet. I can see that a lot of effort is being spent on defects. Majority of the distribution is being spent on defects. I can see that it takes longer and longer and longer to deliver features, which is incredibly concerning for the business, right? And then I can see that the backlog, the load that we're putting on this work value stream, the features keep going up as well. So that immediately gives me the sense that, okay, something's going on here with potentially production issues or defects. There's a lot of unplanned work that's coming into this value stream and essentially bumping out the features that we're ultimately wanting to deliver for this value stream. So for that as an example, we can start actually investigating further. And we're going to look at this little find bottleneck section within flow load that lets us see, okay, all this work that's in progress for this value stream, give me like a nice scatter graph of all the information that's there in that WIP so that I can immediately start seeing, number one, which steps in my process is a whole bunch of work piling in. Then I can tell, okay, this part of the value stream is being overloaded, or if there's a state that work is spending a lot of time in. So those are the 2 things that you might want to start looking at. And if we look at this actual table down here that's kind of explaining what you see in the graph, we see that the first entry is all about my incidents that are coming from ServiceNow. And interestingly, 74 incidents are at any given time in progress for my production tickets. That immediately tells me that one of my hypotheses earlier was accurate, that this value stream is just getting a huge load of incoming production tickets. And I can prove it by showing that out of everything that I kind of just walked through, right? Your flow time is going up, your flow load for features is increasing, which means you're not taking a dent out of that feature backlog that you're wanting to deliver. And I can clearly show that the most work is piling up for incidents in an in progress state. And just to kind of give you an idea of what you do from here on out is, number one, you could just start investigating, why are there so many incidents, right? Where are they coming from? Why are they originating? And for that, you could argue that let's start actually tracking our customer satisfaction rate as a business result for this particular value stream, so that you can start trying to indicate where is the issue, what is even the business impact of this situation, right? So everything up until now that I talked about was merely just being worried about the value stream getting overloaded and something happening, but you could also start tracking something like customer satisfaction to see what business impact this situation has, right? And ultimately, you'll probably be looking at some either QA practices or anything that happens prior to the release to kind of try to make sure that there's not so many production issues. And interestingly, one of the stories that we have from one of our customers is that when they had a similar situation, what they realized is that they were releasing too often. So they actually were releasing new features daily, and the consumers of those features were, rather than being ready for them and excited to use them, just kept getting kind of confused and lost in their day-to-day work. So what they essentially made, a decision they made, is going to a monthly release, or I think bi-monthly or monthly release, but that let them see a tremendous decrease in production issues, which were actually just customers complaining about not being able to understand how something works. So just to give you a real world example of what we've seen happen. And that's kind of a little bit of a story about about how you use all the metrics, and like Naomi said, how can you actually take action by looking at them. And Naomi, I'm gonna go back so you can cover the next ones.
Yeah, perfect. Right. So that point about releasing less frequently, that's the importance of dark launches, right? Where we see those being absolutely essential for the shift to product, that you can release to production, but not necessarily unveil to your customers if you're going to be changing things so rapidly. So we're going to pick up speed a little bit now. We got three more to go through. So now we're going to talk about abstraction. Mara and I spoke a little bit about abstraction already, what flows into a value stream, kind of categorizing that into the four big picture value creation, value protection artifacts. But there's another element to abstraction that we want to talk about here, which is the ability to project the business lens over carefully selected data subsets from within the tool chain so that you can measure by product line. The reality is that if you're a traditional business, out of the gate, your tools and your whole operation is not really structured based on a product. You know, you got all the projects and components and initiatives, and everything is like structured in a different way in your tools. The tools all have their own language. So if you want, even over your current state, to be able to carve out the data subsets that constitute a single product, you have to be able to do that pretty flexibly. You have to be able to plug into those tools and just say, like, I want this bit and that bit, apply that condition, there we go. That's what I need from that tool. And then moving on to the other tool, this is what I need. I need this assignment group from ServiceNow. I need this project in Jira filtered by this team. You need that flexibility to do that. And you also need the capability to connect to those endpoints, get those artifacts and workflows from the tools without limitations. And once you've pointed your product value stream, your product model to those sources of information, you want to be able to do that classification into higher level units of value, right? You don't want to be looking necessarily at every little subtask. You want to look at stories, at features, at epics that are moving through the pipeline, right? So that's really important to say, what should we be measuring? What should we not be focusing on? And then as I mentioned earlier, our organizations are so volatile and things are always changing, and we're reorganizing and we're changing a product portfolio and so on. So whatever you set up has to be flexible enough that you can make those changes and without losing anything, without losing the fidelity of your data, without starting from scratch, right? It should be just a simple configuration to say, okay, now add in this piece, subtract that piece, but maintain the stability of your metrics. So yeah, Mara, would you like to show how we do that with product modeling and tool connection?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back over here into the platform, and remember how every time I bring the platform up, I keep saying that the beauty is that you see the information in a very easy to comprehend language. What Naomi was just covering is the true complexities that may be driving the work behind these value streams, right? So each of the value streams, think about your organization, may have a different set of tools that they're working in. So for instance, my payment platform works in Azure, Jira, and ServiceNow. If I look at predictive analytics, this particular value stream uses Enterprise One, Azure, GitLab, version 1, and ServiceNow. So each of these value streams can have a different tool chain, different tool set that is letting them do their job the best, right? So the one of the key components and the capabilities that Naomi was talking about is the ability to come in here and actually say, for this particular value stream uses, sorry, I'll bring up another screen so that we can see a couple different examples, but this particular value stream uses version 1, and not just version 1, it actually within version 1 uses these particular projects. So you can see that I have a specific list of projects that I'm grabbing for this value stream. And then further, the next step will be, we won't go into it because we're running out of time here, but the ability to, again, start carving the data out a little further and saying that only these pieces from these projects contribute to this value stream. But this is a very, very key piece to be able to do this at scale and very efficiently, so that you don't have to worry about, as a consumer of this information, you don't have to worry about how Enterprise One team calls an epic in their system, that they tend to call it a phase or whatever it is, right? So you don't want to be worried about that. But that's kind of the first level of abstraction, and like I said, then you go into further levels of abstraction that we can dive into another day. But Naomi, I'll just leave it at that for now.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's move on to number 6. Number 6 is flow automation. So once you measure your value stream, it's very likely that you'll uncover waste rooted in manual handovers between your tools, between your teams and practitioners. So automating the flow of work and replacing manual operations with digital workflows serves to remove waste and inefficiencies from the value stream. So some capabilities that you'd be looking for here is like being able to automatically advance work to the next step in another tool when it's ready to flow over, or creating and updating artifacts in one tool based on something that happened in another tool, and basically adding it to the next owner's backlog, or creating and propagating digital relationships, digital links between artifacts to trace their relationships across tools, right? Which is often people do this manually and it's an absolute nightmare. So when you're optimizing a value stream, you're really looking to allow teams to reduce and optimize flow and reduce bottlenecks that are rooted in cross-tool, cross-team dependencies. So Mara, over to you to show just a brief demonstration of what that would look like.
Yeah. So in this little example, what I'm bringing up here is a integration landscape view of a Tasktop integration hub. And this is kind of to back what Naomi was saying, is being able to connect the different steps within your process and being able to kind of map various different things like status and things like that, and then just be able to create various different integration styles. So just to give a couple examples of what Naomi was just talking about, for example, I have my, if you're using Azure DevOps and ServiceNow as your ticketing and development management tools, then I can actually expand my little integrations here and show how I'm integrating. And let me move that a little bit away, but we'll zoom in here. You'll see that I'm currently integrating between Azure and ServiceNow my incidents as user stories and as bugs. So as an example, just to kind of explain what is visible on the screen, is we can see that incidents from Azure DevOps are flowing over to Azure as both as stories or defects. So the scenario there may be, okay, as my production tickets, going back to the story that I was just telling, as my production tickets come in and they get triaged, whether those are feature requests or there are actual issues, defects, then they get sent to the development team as user stories or bugs. So the ability to kind of drive that workflow, drive that automated communication between various different systems. And then if we actually went into, and I got kicked out, but if we actually went into each of these different integration points and explored it a little deeper, you can see how it allows you to also do some of those kind of workflow steps and automation steps that Naomi was talking about. I changed status in ServiceNow, the status updates on Azure DevOps and vice versa. Or if the Azure DevOps object is development done, it automatically sends it over to the QA team's board for testing, for example. So all those things are kind of encompassed within these different integrations. And as you can see, there's a lot of integrations that I have running. But actually, it is not uncommon to have such complex integration tool and artifact networks as you see here, because that's reality, right? Going back to Naomi's, one of her points is about that each of the customers that we work with, it is normal to have 4 to 10 at least systems that they actually manage their work in. So this is a very normal picture that you may see. All right, Naomi, just gonna pass back to you so we make it through the last few.
Yes, we will make it. So number 7, lucky number 7 is governance. Look, governance is a huge topic, okay? And it has many facets. But when we think about value stream management, we're thinking about creating a control plane for delivering software at scale. So here are the capabilities that could benefit you and really give you a return on your investment is to establish governance over what to measure and how to measure value streams. Right? That you create that common language, that common platform. This is how it's done in our company. And you provide a clear, unified approach to improving quality and velocity. And then the third thing is that now, if you can get your value streams looking like product value streams and use those to help direct and govern the shift from a project operating model to a product orientation, that will be to your benefit, because you can see how gradually, as you become more and more product oriented, you might be moving to cross-skill teams, and you might be moving to smaller batch sizes and all that. You're going to be seeing improvements in your flow. So that was lucky number 7. We're not demoing that today. So I wanted to summarize in the next slide that getting actionable real-time visibility into end-to-end flow requires 3 capabilities. The first is the ability to capture data from any tool without interruption and without destabilizing the tool's daily operation. The second is the ability to join and abstract the data from the individual tools into one integrated set of value stream metrics or flow metrics per value stream with powerful analytics and visualizations that highlight opportunities for improvement and investment. And the third is that you can view the data through the business lens so that the software delivery performance can be correlated to business results. So I want to show you, Mara, if you go to the next slide, this is the Tasktop's approach through a kind of a pure play VSM platform. We come in, and Mara, if you could animate this gradually, right? We come in and we plug in above the enterprise tool chain, which is ever changing, with a VSM platform that can capture the data And what we call flow fabric is what is the data transportation backbone that insulates your metrics and automations from the complexity of the tool chain, collects that data into what we call flow telemetry, where we have semantically enriched data that we can rapidly regenerate each time the business view changes. Above that, a flow modeling layer, which applies the business lens to your software delivery data. And that's accompanied by two engines, an analytics and machine learning engine and an orchestration engine. And above that come the user experiences, right? We've looked today at both Tasktop Viz, which measures flow, and Tasktop Hub that automates the flow through integration. And there's so much more we could have showed you, so go deeper and into the how and so on. But with just an hour, we'd invite you to reach out to us for a deep dive demo if you're interested, so we can show you so much more about the capabilities that a value stream management tool can provide. So we want to summarize by thanking you for attending today. And if you would like this information in kind of a digestible form, we have a buyer's guide for value stream metrics and flow metrics that you could download from Tasktop's website.